So kia ora koutou. Hi everybody, my name is Councillor Whitehead. I'm chairing the meeting today, and Ken Bailey, the GM of Community Services, is away today, but we have Michelle Morse here. We have councillors Wong and Guy present at the table. Welcome. And we have Councillor Bruce online. Welcome, Councillor Bruce. Thank you. So we have apologies today from Councillor Ferguson, chair of this committee. He has approved leave of absence. And we also have apologies from Councillor Tucker, who can't make it today. Are there any requests for leaves of absence from any councillors? No. Thank you.
If I can, Esther, my 4-year-old granddaughter is having her final day at preschool and would like me there for her farewell about 2:30, so I'll depart the meeting early.
Okay, thank you. And can we have that apologies be accepted? Can we have a mover and seconder, please? Mover Councillor Wong and seconder Councillor Guy. Thank you. Motion carried. Do we have any declarations of conflict of interest? No. No. Thank you. Okay, so today we have one registered speaker at public forum, and that is Ian Rudden-Clough. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Thank you. So welcome, Ian. Please come and speak to us. Thank you for coming last time. Come and join us at the table.
Okay.
You have 3 minutes.
Now?
Yes, please.
Okay, I will. You all know my name, so I won't need to introduce myself, but firstly, I'd like to thank Brianna for clearing up the technicality to allow me to speak today on our application for the removal of 8 eucalypts at Jardine Park next to Wakatipu Croquet Club. We are really disappointed that the council parks team are still recommending that our application be declined, when at the last meeting, the committee voted against it being declined and resolved that the application be brought back to today's meeting to approve the request to remove the trees and go to public consultation. Now, the public consultation has already happened and shows overwhelming support for the removal of the gum trees, with concern for safety being a common theme in the feedback. We put this application on the 11th of July last year, so it has been quite a frustrating process to get it to this stage. It almost seems that these outcomes are more important than the safety, well-being and enjoyment of the ratepayers who live in our wonderful district. I don't want to waste the time by going over everything that I said at the last meeting, but I think our application meets section 4.3 and 4.4 of the QLDC tree policy, in which either section allows trees to be removed. This is backed up from the public consultation, the letters from my current, the tree advisor and logger, and also from the Wakatipu Reforestation Trust and the G. Malpa's Nursery, which I distributed at the last meeting. There's also backed up in a report that I found online. Sorry, and it's a report dated back to dated on 26th of March 2021, where the QLDC Parks team employed consultant David Spencer from 10 Trees Limited in Wellington to do a risk assessment on removing a group of trees to form a new cycleway. Now, why I think it is relevant to the Jardine Park situation is that the trees that were identified to be removed left others exposed to the wind, exactly what we're going to have over at Jardine Park. Now, here David Spencer says in paragraph 9.1 of this report, the removal of the edge of stand trees often results in internal trees being subjected to increased wind exposure. Now, these have not been previously exposed to the increased wind load. They have not had the opportunity to adapt and therefore have an increased likelihood of failure. It goes on 9.3. While it is not possible to predict which trees from a group of fuel exposed trees will fall, it is likely that one or more of these trees will fail during the next high wind event or even moderate wind event. And finally, in 9.4, he says trees generally fall during weather events that are considered abnormal. However, it should be noted that trees exposed to new wind loading can and do fall during normal or prevailing weather conditions.
Thank you, Ian. Your 3 minutes is up, so I just want to finish.
I have just at the end of their day, our members just want to come along to the club, play and enjoy the great game they love. They shouldn't have to spend some of their time clearing debris before they start. They shouldn't need to feel unsafe or have interruption to their play when we have to close the lawn because of westerly winds. So in conclusion, we really hope this committee approves our request so the council can finish the job that has been approved and started some years ago. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian.
Thanks, Ian.
Thank you for spending the time to come to us again.
It's okay.
I just wanted to take this moment to just say that the last meeting was somewhat confusing with the double negative, and that left, I think, everybody feeling a little frustrated. The committee voted against declining the application rather than, I think there was a different understanding of that rather than the recommendation. But it's before us again, and in the interim, it's been out to the community as well, which is something that we wanted to happen. So we've had the response from that, and there is a majority that agree with the removal request. So yeah, just wanted to clarify what actually happened, and thank you for your time on both occasions.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, so confirmation of the agenda. Can we have a confirmation that the agenda be taken without addition or alteration? Sorry, any movers and seconds.
I'll move it. I suppose I've just got a new councillor question raised then in order. So if we're looking at some of the amendments that perhaps coming later on into proposals, does that mean we're accepting the agenda as written? Does that come at a later point in the proceedings?
So we can confirm the agenda as is, but we can make amendments later on if need be.
Yeah, you're not confirming the resolutions within the agenda.
Just
the
what's on
agenda.
I'm happy to move that. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Motion carried. And confirmation of minutes, that the minutes of the 21st of February 2023 meeting be confirmed without addition or alteration. We have a mover and a seconder.
Second.
Councillor Bruce doesn't have to do anything from us. Okay, thank you. Motion carried. Okay, so today we have before us a request for the removal of council trees throughout the Whakatupu Basin. We have the report author Brianna Pringle with us today. So for the purpose of this report, it's to consider the applications to remove trees on reserve land in the Whakatupu Basin. So we would like to hear from Brianna and also ask any questions that may be relevant.
Hi everyone, I just want to introduce Yvette Ridley. She's
Sorry,
the Parks volunteer community coordinator, and she was a co-author of the report, so she's been involved.
Thank you, sorry about.
So report taken as read and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, councillors.
Should we take them and
As you want, if you've got questions for Brianna, you can ask away.
yeah, I suppose mine are coming from the Arrowtown tree perspective, Brianna, and we've had quite a lot of communication and looking into the submissions that were received and community questions. And I know that we talk about not being able to be a staged removal of the avenue of larches due to budget now, budget gone consideration. Can you speak to that a little bit more for me to understand the funding of the larches in the avenue in particular, where to go in this round?
Yeah, sure, through the chair. So at the moment, the Wilding Group do get that budget to complete that full operation in Arrowtown, which has been proposed. If we were to stage, which can be done, it just means that we don't have that security with the funding in those future years, knowing that not to, budgets are set, but whether or not funding does come through in those future years to then revisit that, and depending on priorities around the basin, whether or not that would still be a high priority with the avenue of trees, but that's something we can take back to the Wilding Group.
And probably some other questions from the community. So what I've been able to discover is back in about 2014, I think, anything over 2.4 metres was protected as a tree across the village, across Arrowtown. And when I think Minister Smith, that change came into play, David Clark told me there was a walk around of the village area and pretty much a verbal, that's a good tree, that's a good tree, that's a good tree. The community have asked whether that was conducted out as far as the golf course. And there's a lot of community sentiment around the more recent history of the trees in the area, particularly those planted by Mr. Newman of quite different species within the golf course, as to whether they were identified and given any historic consideration, and who conducted that sort of species identification for this tree removal. And they talked about a aspen, I can go into my emails. I think I've copied you in on these emails. You probably know the trees that I'm talking about. But the community question was, how convinced are we that there has been some consideration around the aesthetic and historic significance of the trees within that 178 we're talking about taking up? There was a lot of community understanding and appreciation of the wilding group and the work that's been done on Tobin's Face and those surrounding areas to bring back the autumn colour. But there's this real pivot point that we're at now, where we're right between priority 1, which is removing all the bad colour on the visual places, and priority 2, which is getting rid of wild and exotics. So they're going, this eternal debate we sort of sit on is, what is a good tree? Is only a native tree a good tree, or do we have trees of other significance within the Arrowtown community in particular that has the history meets nature tagline, where there's community sentiment, but perhaps that avenue of larches had some form of protection over it from the historic protection of the 2.4 metres. There doesn't seem to be any community concern around the removal of the trees within the golf course area itself, those Douglas firs and the smaller clumps of larches. It's really around the protection of that aesthetic avenue approach up into the village, and some concern that the planting we've already done isn't taking. So I suppose any other questions you could answer for me around the maintenance and ongoing care of the plants we put in and associated costs with that. The community talked of Cenotaph Hill, where the firs were taken out and the replanting happened and those trees aren't surviving. They've talked about the 2 to 3 metre trees at the entranceway that we've put in that aren't surviving and have got frost damage to the tips and just aren't taking. And we're not talking about 2 to 3 metre trees coming out. We're talking about 80-year-old, very mature statement trees at the entrance to the village. So I've been asked to check in on maintenance, irrigation, a care plan, and what the community are really asking is, could we have a master plan of all the trees in Arrowtown and what our management strategy is for the end of life trees and their replacement, and which ones do we really value, even if they might be a seed source risk. The community wholeheartedly in support that one avenue couldn't be managed as a tree seed source, while still appreciating that it is a pest tree by its definition.
So have you got
feel
some
like
questions there, Brianna, that you think you can answer?
Yeah, I've just
Yeah.
written through.
Okay.
I've got a couple here. Should I start and just go through it? Happy
Thank you.
sent through the chair. So I guess the first comment that you had was how Arrowtown used to have a protected tree zone within, that was in the district plan, and that was just around, it wasn't out to Centennial Ave. I can't remember the exact strips, but it was the older town, and then at that stage all trees were protected, as you said, to that 2.4 metres. So any work before that day had to come through council and be approved, whether it was pruning or removing, and then that was lifted because you couldn't blanket cover trees anymore. And so that's where council said, Through the district plan, currently we can protect significant trees, and there's still an avenue there. And we see for ourselves, any trees on council reserve land or street trees, they're protected through council anyway, because there is a process before they have to be removed. But it's the other trees that are on private land. So that's something that maybe, you know, our department can talk again with the Arrowtown community on what trees outside of council land need to be protected, or we're looking at a plan change soon to get some more protected trees in. Are there other trees which are of significance within Arrowtown that they do want to protect? But I guess then it brings up that conversation about wild and seed sources within that. You had a comment on, is it all exotics bad? And no, it's the wrong tree or the right tree in the right place, or the wrong tree in the wrong place. So, which is causing an issue, and that's just those species which are those conifer species. So there's a lot of other exotics which are shown around Arrowtown, which there is no problem with that, and council don't have any issue with that. So it's just targeting those main species like the Douglas fir, the larch, and the radiata, which are causing that spread. You mentioned the golf course and the avenue of trees, and whether or not we could leave those trees, but no matter where the tree is, seed can travel for up to, you know, they've said between 10 to 40 k's in high winds. So depending on where the tree is, and there are some significant faces around those avenue trees, which are the token spaces behind Arrowtown, and then the crown terraces above, which have the vulnerable landscapes where low-lying tussock, etc., we see can land and germinate quickly. So you can't specifically have some trees which you say you're going to manage that spread from, because there's no way of particularly managing spread from those seed sources. In terms of a master plan for Arrowtown, that's where we could only look at council reserve land and streets. We couldn't look at private land because it's not allowed under the district plan unless it is a significant tree and meets that definition where it could be protected. So there's conversations we could have there with the Arrowtown community. I know at the moment there's design guidelines, and in there's comments that they're quite old now, the design guidelines, but guidelines about around what species should be planted. And I think the golf course have considered some of that within their new planting plan.
There were questions from the community about being able to add other varietals to that planting plan. The feedback I've had is that that's quite narrow, and they had made other suggestions. And I suppose with all these suggestions still flying in, and the significance of that visual impact, it makes me really cautious around, they're obviously stirring up so much community sentiment. And we had a recent public meeting with Mahi Whenua, which talked about the spread of the larches up onto the hill, and their strategy has been to fight it back into the village. But they also listened and considered the community opinion around the value of the larches on the German hill face, and the value of creating trails through them for mountain biking as established canopies. So there was this sort of trying to strike a balance between the community of saying that it's a little ironic that our autumn colour trees are not allowed to spread by the very nature of saying we're not putting in wilding exotics. So anything to give us colour in Arrowtown is going to have to be planted, one tree or two trees at a time, when the community is saying this is a significant aesthetic, that we do want to see some balance with our natives. And we've got this stand of quite stunning mature trees that are at risk of going from my vote today. So yeah, thank you for giving me that background, and also for the stuff you've sent through. And I've read the wilding strategy and the wilding group reports and your feedback on. I know larch are deemed by our categories to be in that piece species. I'm just hearing from some of my community that they love them. So I'm feeling thank you.
I just have one more just to answer your question on the maintenance. And obviously we're like these historic plantings, and sometimes dry summer, or you see with the frost, there are plants that may not succeed, and there's always that where we do have to revisit some of these areas. So that's something that our team can look at that hill. But also with this tree policy now, with the 2-for-1 replacement, we're revisiting the tree policy and looking at those policies and how they work, and maybe can have some more strength in there about monitoring those succession plantings. Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you. Do any other councillors have any other questions about any of the items on the agenda?
Maybe just in relation to the eucalyptus in Jardine Park, just understanding whether the long-term view of, say, neighbouring Wakatipu Reforestation Trust, whether you're able to take that into consideration when you make the recommendations, or whether you just are bound by the tree policy and you can't really make those considerations or have those as part of your decision making.
So as part of our decision-making process for that, it was looking at the tree policy and the policies within that, and because the trees were healthy, and I mean, we've got the community consultation coming in there, which everyone can read and see, but our decision was based on that policy and our recommendation on that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bruce, do you have any questions? You're on mute.
No, I haven't got, obviously, listening to the point of view from both councillors on this, because you're more familiar with trees on your side of the hill. I'm well aware that the tree issue is a sensitive issue and quite emotive, but also that we've got a situation here with the golf club, for example, and I have to also bear in mind that the sports clubs or groups that often run these park areas are very good custodians of the land.
Thank you. I do have a couple of questions myself. So I guess I just want to firstly acknowledge that the tree policy is largely sound, and I think today it's really, whilst this is a short agenda, it's actually showing us the complexity of the tree discussion. And I've talked to officers and fellow councillors about, I've been relating it to George Orwell. All trees are equal, but some trees are more equal than others. And we're really facing this situation, I think, where it's becoming increasingly difficult to actually understand the value of the trees from different points of view. So with regards to some of the items on the agenda, it's been described by officers that there is a risk, a seed source of the large trees on Centennial Ave, which we have to take very seriously, given that the seed source flows over a large area as well. But we also have unique situations in some of our sites, and that's what's coming through today in discussion. You mentioned, Brianna, that you speak only to the tree policy, but you've also mentioned about the review. So my question really is around, when we're reviewing the tree policy, do you see that we can start to think about unique sites in a different way, even though that's complex?
I don't know if the tree policy is that mature yet. I don't think we're at that level where we've mapped and understand the different sites. So I don't think in this version of the review that we will be addressing that. I think we'll just be looking at the implementation of the policies and how it's worked within the workflow over the last 12 months. And you know, where there are issues and it does need to be amended. Yeah.
Thank you. And yeah, happy to hear that I guess there's ongoing conversation around design guidelines. And for the public listening as well, I think it's really important to note that this is such a huge piece of work for our district. It's an expensive piece of work, and we're trying to get there essentially, but it is complex. So thank you. I don't have any further questions. So Yvette, did you have any further comments on anything?
No, I think everyone's aware that the avenue was always going to be a bit contentious, but just talking to the budget factor. So with the Whakatipu Wilding Control Group, they have been lucky to have additional funding from MPI and the government.
Okay.
That ends at the end of this financial year. So they've been doing a maintenance and stopping the seed source program throughout our district. And next financial year, that moves to just a maintenance program. So they're calling it Maintenance Plus. So they're just working on the places that they've already cleared.
Right.
And don't have the government funding to stop the spread as they have the last couple of years.
Thank you. That's valuable.
So can I ask another question about that? If they weren't to use it to take out large revenue, would they be able to continue working using budget to remove other wildland seed source around the areas they're already working in, or is that literally just a surrender of the funding?
They are under a lot of pressure at the moment because of a very long-winded procurement process that they have to go to get all the contractors in place this year. It has essentially meant that they're doing the financial year of work in 6 months. So I'd say it would be more than likely that they'd use that money.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so this report has 3 applications to remove and replace trees on reserve land. It's 1 resolution, so I'm going to propose, given our discussion today and listening to councillors, that we separate the requests within the resolution. So we have 1, note the contents of this report. We have 2, approve the request by Arrowtown Golf Club to remove approximately 168 wild and conifer trees from QLDC leased reserve land at the Arrowtown Golf Course. We have 3, approve the request from Whakatapu Wild and Conifer Control Group to remove wild and conifer trees on QLDC reserve land between 1 Mile and Sunshine Bay Reserve. And 4, decline the request by the Whakatapu Croquet Club to remove 8 mature eucalyptus trees growing on QLDC reserve land at Jardine Park, Calvin Peninsula. Can we please take these separately and look at number 2 initially? So councillors, number 2 is approving the request for our town golf club, 168 wild and conifer trees. There's been discussion around Centennial Ave. Would we like to put in any conditions or any changes and amendments to number 2 or an additional 2A?
I would like to see some form of wording amendment where we may be able to give the larch a staged or separate consideration, separate to the 42, I think the 42 Douglas firs in the golf course. I haven't seen any hesitation around, so it's just some way of distinguishing out the avenue from the other.
So we could
trees.
propose to have keep 2 as is, but have 2A, which might be to decline the removal of Centennial Avenue trees, larches, until we have a plan of a staged approach before us.
I think
Or was that effect?
I
Maybe
think
Michelle?
that was one of the Arrowtown design panel advisory guidelines, that they would have liked to have seen a plan, a clear plan around that management. And I think just to go in and take them all out when we've not quite had the successes we envisaged with some of the other sites, just like to see a really, it's a very hard call to be making, because I'm conscious that the money is sitting there to do the job, and it's the good work of the Wild and Control Group. I really want to acknowledge the great work that's going into removal of the seed source. I'm just very conscious of the community sentiment behind this avenue, and perhaps more consideration of a managed plan of staggering this avenue so we don't lose it somehow.
Yeah. So if we were to put in a 2A that had words to that effect.
No, just
Michelle?
just check with Brianna in terms of the timing to bring something back to this forum again, to bring a stage plan back for Centennial Park. Would that be feasible within the timelines of the budgetary constraints for that group? Would be a way off.
I think we could bring something back and then it will just be dependent on those budgets in those years, whether that was
So they could
feasible.
get on and do the removal within.
Yeah, so we
Every
can
lot
everything
plan around the
avenue.
avenue. Yeah,
Would do you mean
Yeah.
staging the avenue, taking
just
out
the
one
avenue,
turn?
the avenue is where.
So
I'm
should we give you
hearing
some
that.
wording and then you can work with the wording?
Okay.
And you've got some wording?
Yeah, so I'd suggest that we stay with point 2 being approve the request by Arrowtown Golf Club to remove. We need a number of wild and conifer trees from the QLDC leased reserve land at the Arrowtown Golf Course with the exception of Centennial Avenue. And then to add in a second point, maybe 2A or 2B, request officers return to this committee with a staged plan for the removal of the trees on Centennial Ave.
And replacement.
Stage removal and reforestation.
You might repeat that.
The second point.
Yes, please.
Requests that officers return to this committee with a staged plan for the removal and subsequent replacement of the trees on Centennial Avenue.
The Centennial Ave and the larches along there, that is QLDC road reserve. So it has a different status to the land within the golf course, so it could be within the road reserve.
Okay,
I think
So-
just as long as we're cautious to not take out a physical tree that's forming that avenue, regardless of whose land it's sitting on, if it's on the, it's like golf course side of the fence or the road
Yeah.
reserve side of the fence, they're pretty easy to spot which ones we're talking about when we're driving along, so.
so I think that probably comes into play in the first piece, doesn't it? We need to be specific there. Do you have some recommendations of how we might change that wilding reference, the 168 trees?
If you said through the chair with and in the golf club lease area,
Okay,
all the wilding trees within the golf
Yeah.
club lease area, that would cover that. And noting the point about the avenue trees, they definitely, and I have assessed them and they're definitely in the road reserve, so
okay.
that would protect that.
For now.
And so the wording that we just proposed would fit with the fact that it's in the reserve land as a staged approach
Mhm.
to removal and replacement.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Can we clarify, sorry, how, point 2, how would that read now?
2A or 2B?
Just regular, the first part 2, before 2A.
Oh, sorry, so 2 is approve the request by Arrowtown Golf Club to remove approximately 168 wild and conifer trees within the Arrowtown Golf Club lease area.
Can I just suggest, actually, I think it was remove all conifer trees, because the 168 includes
No
Centennial
longer.
Avenue. Yeah. So approve the request by Arrowtown Golf Club to remove all wilding conifer trees within the Arrowtown Golf Course leased area with the exception, oh, yeah, we don't need the exception.
No.
Okay, great.
Full stop. 2A,
Okay, check, so approve the request by Arrowtown Golf Club to remove all wilding conifer trees within the golf club lease area.
Within the Arrowtown Golf Course leased area.
Within the Arrowtown.
With the exception of Centennial Avenue.
We don't need that anymore because Centennial Avenue is not within the golf course leased area.
Sure.
Yeah, correct.
so we'll put in an extra point,
Yeah,
which will now state the significance of Centennial Ave. And that, I think you've got wording, sorry, Michelle.
request that officers return to this committee with a staged plan for the removal and subsequent replacement of the trees on Centennial Avenue.
I don't think we need the word subsequent, do we? But
Well, I think that's where the community have asked for there to be more diverse consideration as to what's going in there as well. And to have there's been other suggestions of different exotics that might enhance the colour and aesthetic of that.
okay, are we comfortable with the wording?
I am.
Okay,
I think that's to read down, do you have it?
yes, no, I'll read yours. Don't want to get it wrong again. So we're going to vote on this. So we have approve the request by Arrowtown Golf Club to remove all wild and conifer trees within the Arrowtown Golf Club lease area. And 2A, to request the officers return to the committee with a staged plan for the removal and subsequent replacement of the trees on Centennial Avenue. Do we have a mover and a seconder?
I'll move it.
Thank you. Thank you, councillor.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to item 3. Approve the request from the Whakatipu Wild and Conifer Control Group to remove wild and conifer trees on QLDC reserve land between 1 mile to Sunshine Bay Reserve. Do we have a mover and a seconder?
Mover.
Mover, thank you. Okay. And item number 4 currently stands as decline the request by the Whakatipu Croquet Club to remove 8 mature eucalyptus trees growing on QLDC reserve land at Jardine Park and Calvin Peninsula. I would like to propose an amendment to this. Rather than dealing with double negatives, I would like to amend this to approve the request by Whakatipu Croquet Club to remove 8 mature eucalyptus trees growing on QLDC reserve land at Jardine Park, Calvin Peninsula, including the condition of, sorry, can you help me with this,
Yes,
Councillor Wall?
aligning the removal with the stand of wilding pines scheduled for May 2023.
Thank you.
Would you mind repeating that?
I don't know if I can.
So the
Aligning with
the beginning
scheduled
is the same as it
removal
was.
of the fines in 2023, May 2023. That's it.
with condition.
Aligning with the removal of wilding pines in Jardine Park in May 2023. I think I've covered it all.
Yeah.
Okay. Do we have a mover?
Do you mind me just? repeat that?
Sorry, yes. Approve the request by the Whakatipu Croquet Club to remove 8 mature eucalyptus trees growing on QLDC reserve land at Jardine Park, Calvin Peninsula, including the condition of aligning with removal of standing wilding pines in Jardine Park in May 2023. Do we have a mover?
Can I speak to it, I guess, first?
Oh,
Just
yes.
so we're
Yeah,
clear on
absolutely.
why we're
Yes, yeah.
getting the reversal, I guess, of the recommendation. So I guess unlike our officers in QLDC who must adhere to the tree policy, the lucky advantage we have as councillors, of course, is we do have that ability to flex a little, shall we say. I had the privilege of being hosted by the Whakatipu Reforestation Trust out at Jardine Park, and they're doing some amazing work out there. And although it doesn't necessarily relate to the group that we've got represented here today, I spent a bit of time with them talking about what their plan would be if we could remove those gum trees. They just gave me a few highlights. So they were planted 35 years ago. And so to them, there's no historical significance. There is a little bit more exposure, I guess, to those gum trees when those pines are going to get removed. And there's significant support from Whakatipu Reforestation Trust to have them removed. And their plan, which was probably more interesting to me, was to prepare the ground, if these trees are removed, prepare the ground in winter, and by spring they will be planting a ratio of 10:1, which is phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal as far as I'm concerned. The current policy states 2:1, is that right, for native trees or replanting? So if we remove the 8 trees, potentially there's 80 new natives sitting in their place, which is, again, an amazing facility for our community. And I think it creates an amazing biodiversity for that ecosystem long term. Joe Smith, who's also an employee of the Whakatipu Reforestation Trust, has got a great education program there as well, and she wants to amplify that with the progress that they'll be making with the removal of pines, but also the gums. So that's just my reasoning why I think that we should approve the removal of those gum trees. With respect to all the work you do, because I know it's quite complicated and you've got to stay within the lane, so I appreciate that.
Thank you, Councillor Wong. Well, I might just add my piece as well then, which is just to, along the same lines that I mentioned before, which is to state that we do have a policy, and in the policy it talks about we won't take trees down if they're healthy, and we won't take them down just because of the nuisance of debris. And we're choosing as councillors to look beyond that. The exceptional circumstances, definitely, I think for me, around the expertise of the Simpsons and Neil and Barbara Simpson, and what they're doing along with staff, Joe Smith in Jardine Park. So for me, that's hugely swayed the reasoning around going against the officer's recommendation, but we do thank you for the work that you've provided. So on that note, do we have a mover and a seconder?
I'll move.
Councillor Wong has moved. Councillor Guy has seconded.
Second, and this Barry wants to have a turn on.
Barry, would you like to second it?
Want you to feel better.
I'm happy to second that.
Thank you very much. Okay, well, thank you all.
Just a note, Esther, sorry to interrupt. We haven't actually voted on point number 1.
Oh, sorry, yes.
Content,
To
and then
note the contents of this
we
report.
just need everyone to vote, because Barry does count in the vote here as well. So we just need a all in favour for all points.
Okay, thank you. So if I go across all of the new points that we have individually voted on, so we've got 1, 2, 2A, 3 and 4. Can we please have a mover to those and a seconder, all in favour?
Aye.
So
Aye.
councillor Wong, mover, and all in favour? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. And that takes us to the conclusion of the meeting, and the time is 1:42.